India has just celebrated its 68th year of independence, but the mood has dampened since last year when the excitement of a newly elected government created a sense of opportunity. With me now is Shaily Mittal, MNI indicator economist, to find out what is driving and impacting growth in the world's 10th largest economy. Shaily, it's all too easy to focus on the bad news and negative indicators. So how does India's economy stand in a global context?
While it's true that there's a lot of negativity surrounding the Indian economy, with industrial production growing at sub 4%, trade deficit rising to an 8-month high in July, and rupee having breached the 66 mark just yesterday, even our business and consumer sentiment indicators, which MNI indicators produces every month, paints a weak picture of the Indian economy. Even our consumer sentiment service shows that consumer sentiment is waning and Indian households are increasingly wary about their personal finances. Despite all this negativity, India is at a sweet position compared to other emerging markets. For example, China is witnessing a slowdown. Russia, Brazil, South Africa, Indonesia are all suffering due to a crash in oil and commodity prices. So on a whole, India is the only emerging market economy right now with a stable political environment, with a government that is keen to pursue economic reforms, a proactive central bank governor who's committed in bringing down inflation and a large and growing labor force. So on a whole, India has all the right ingredients of success.
Now, the Wall Street Journal recently reported that mounting bad loan ratios at Indian banks are a sign the country's economy isn't doing nearly as well as recent rosy output growth figures suggest. What do you make of this?
While it's true, when the latest figures about GDP came out, it puzzled a lot of people and were at odds with many indicators. And while policymakers had hoped that the economic growth rebound will lead to a reduction in bad loans or so-called non-performing assets, it clearly did not happen. I think one also needs to keep in mind that the rise in non-performing assets is independent to economic growth. While we've seen a rebound in last 3 to 4 quarters, there's usually a time lag involved between reduction in non-performing assets. Also, a lot of these bad loans are associated with sectors such as infrastructure, industries that have a high gestation period, such as real estate. So the government has been slow in making these sectors kickstart. So over there's also a time lag involved. Also, a lot of these loans turned bad when they were given to companies. Kingfisher is a classic example, where these companies have just become defunct. So even if economic growth rebounds, these loans will have to be written off. So an absence of strong bankruptcy laws hinders banks' progress. But just lately, on 15th August, India's Independence Day, the government announced a policy known as Indradhanush policy. So what it aims to do is to infuse $11 billion of capital over the next 4 years, of which $3 billion will just go to public sector banks in next month, in order to reduce non-performing assets and mobilize further lending.
And what emerging trends are you seeing coming out of India's economy?
E-commerce is expected to create large corporate giants within India, with spending expected to rise from 13 billion right now to 135 billion in just 5 years. And foreign investors are recognizing this potential and already putting in a lot of capital in this sector. In the press, there's always news about Flipkart, which is India's local version of Amazon. It's already in excess of 15 billion in value and is in the top 25 most valued companies in India. The second trend, which is urbanization, it is a byproduct of global urbanization, where the share of agriculture sector reduces and more people move towards cities for better prospects for employment. And by 2050, 400 million people are expected to move towards cities from rural areas, which is more than the entire population of the US. So this is the scale that we're talking about in India, and urbanization will provide a lot of potential for other infrastructure and other engineering firms in India.
And how would you say these trends will be felt in the rest of the world?
The most important impact will be that India will provide an investment potential for the rest of the world. A lot of companies are already looking at India as a key market of success. A lot of e-commerce companies are not only looking at India as another market, but as an absolute key for their success. A lot of construction firms, engineering firms are investing in India because India lacks in a modern infrastructure, and this is where they're going to plug the hole.
So finally, is India still on the path to become the third largest economy in the world by 2030? And if so, what does it really need to do to achieve this?
While a lot has been talked about India's growth, and I would say although it has a lot of potential, it clearly needs to go through some very difficult and large-scale economic reforms. First being large-scale industrialization, establishment of manufacturing hubs in conjunction with labor laws. India is considered to be one of the most rigid economies in terms of labor laws, and that needs to be tackled. Then it also needs reforms in taxation, so as to say the GST, which is goods and services tax. It aims to unify the entire market and bring up tax revenues, which is still pending in the parliament. It also needs a lot of investment in infrastructure, investment in social infrastructure as well, such as education. Last but not the least, in an economy where 50% of the people drive their livelihood from agriculture, there has to be more investment and more innovation in agriculture production as well.